Most of what you consume from so-called experts contains either half-truths, outright lies, or information that is not useful. They keep telling you how wet water is, and you know it is doing you no good. I am committed to sharing nothing but the absolute, unfiltered, unedited, no euphemism truths every single time you hear my voice. Well, hello everyone. I have a conversation I've been looking forward to for quite some time. Got a guest on with me today. As you guys know, I bring on very few guests, and so I'm thrilled to have this conversation with my new friend Anna. Anna, how are you?
I am super well, Amas. Thanks so much for having me on the call today. I'm bright and chirpy in Australia. I've had my 3 coffees and ready to do it.
I don't think anyone needed any convincing that you were from the down under, as they say. So I'm glad to have you on. So really quickly, we're gonna post your bio and all your info with the site, but give us a 30-second intro on who you are and what you do.
All right. I think the best place to start is where I am right now, which is currently I serve as a digital technology advisor to the country of New Zealand. So I work with all kinds of high growth export brands and help them to get established in new markets, predominantly in Australia. So it's just been a wild ride, and anything prior to that is such a non-linear journey in my background. I'm in Australia now. I've lived in the States for a number of years, and Europe, and a little bit of time in Asia. So I'm sure we'll get onto all of those points as we chat today.
We will. I invited you on for a number of reasons, but probably the number one reason is, I don't know how many years. It's been about 4 or 5 years. I was on a podcast like this, and I made the comment that customer service, customer experience, any sort of human-to-human interactions is harder than rocket science. And I know we had people who agreed and disagreed. And what I meant by that was that, as difficult as rocket science is, there are formulas, calculations, and how you can get success every time. There isn't one that I know of that can predict success when you put 2 human beings in a room, on a phone call, on a chat system. And so I met you. And you didn't say it in these words, and you said, "Well, there might be a way, there might be a formula, if you will, that they can predict success more often than others." So I've teased that, but before we get to that, I want to sort of set the stage on why we are where we are today. So let's just start fundamentally on the status quo. My marketing friends who listen to the show all brag that half of the marketing dollars they spend is wasted, but they can't tell which half it is, right? It is common practice that when we are engaged in trying to convince someone to buy something, give us high customer satisfaction scores, whatever it is, most times we fail. And if we get more than 50% of less wasted dollars, fine. If our conversion rate on our website is greater than 4%, like 3%, we're like, woo, that's great. Can you tell me why we have accepted such failure as part of the human experience? Why is accepted failure just a thing that is just common and no one even challenges that?
Yeah, it's such an interesting observation and question to ask ourselves. And starting from that baseline, if you look at industry statistics, 2-3% conversion rates, as a marketer, you're winning. You deserve the promotion, and that's fantastic because it is hard to achieve that. Right. And I'm going to stick to facts, not be skeptical or anything. But if you look at Google and Facebook and their AdWord revenue growth, it looks like a hockey stick, right?
Yes.
your revenue probably does not look like a hockey stick. And so, one can speculate as to reasons why marketing dollars are wasted. But the fundamental premise, which is that we accept that 97% of people who come into your store leave without buying is a really good outcome, is a curiosity that happens only in digital. Like anyone running a retail store or a restaurant, 97% of people who come in through the door, if they don't leave and buy, you go, something's wrong. I've got to fix this situation. And I think for me, it was just like this revelation a few years ago where I started digging into the statistics and going, why do we accept conversion rates which are so incredibly low? And no one's talking about it.
And I think your framing of it is so brilliant, which is the premise here is that we got into digital, right, by largely copying the physical world. Like there's still a cart, there's still a this, but somehow we forgot to copy some of the good things, right? Like
Exactly.
if I get you to come into where I live, where I work, to buy stuff, my store, if you will, most of you should buy stuff, should interact with me. And also, if you use my products and services and we interact, most of it should be positive. We somehow turned our brains off and accepted this. So you live here on this earth, as I imagine. So how did you come about this way of looking at the room and going, well, wait a second. Like, why are we celebrating failure at this high of a rate? How did you sort of quote unquote take the red pill, if you will, and started to say, there's got to be a better way?
Well, I won't get into philosophical questions of whether I took the red pill or the red pill found me. But, if we like think back to Steve Jobs's famous commencement address where he talks about life makes sense in retrospect, the dots line up when you look back over time, not when you look forward. So I think that this dawning or this realization that there has to be a better way for me came in three different parts. It all started with back in I think it was around 2015, and I'd have to look the exact date, but the New York Times put out an amazing article called something like "To fall in love with anyone, do this." And it
Yeah,
absolutely
20 questions to fall in love or something like
right?
that.
36 questions. I think you can
Yeah,
download an
36.
app. That's it. And I was absolutely fascinated. Coming back to your rocket science kind of perspective, I very much thought that, great relationships and none of that is scripted. It's like just luck. Sometimes a relationship works out, sometimes it doesn't. And here's this article that is leaning on research done at Columbia University in the 80s that actually says, hang on, there's a scientific formula for creating love. And that was fascinating. So, being kind of a person who likes to research and dissect things, I took all of this apart and I thought, can we apply it to business relationships, not just interpersonal relationships? And as it turns out, you can. So the reason why this stuff works and why there is a formula for love, which you can apply in business situations and in brand buyer situations in a digital space, is that at the end of the line, always there is a human. And humans make decisions and form relationships in very predictable ways. And so there's decades of research that we can lean on for that. And now it's a matter of translating it and actually leveraging the things we already know in digital spaces so that we don't just wake up every morning and go, 97% of people walking out of the shop is a really great outcome. Good on us, right?
And if you're just tuning in, I've got Anna on the show with us, and we are having an interesting conversation. And to set the stage again, in status quo today, you guys know that I have this viewpoint that human to human relationships is harder than rocket science, right? Relationships with your spouse, finding love, all of that, having customers love your brand, all very difficult. And I said it's harder than rocket science because at least in rocket science, there is these formulas that can predict how to get there. And then I run across my guest today, and she is challenging. She is telling me there are no four walls, that there might be a better way. And it didn't take much convincing for me because as you sort of put it, right? We celebrate the fact that 97% of customers of prospects who visit our digital sites do not buy anything. And if you do that, if you're listening to me and you are able to only fail 97% of the time, they give you a big bonus. You are celebrated. There are books written about you about how great your conversion is on your site. So today we are going to attempt to kind of tear down the walls, and I want you to stick with me because this has been accepted fact for decades and decades that we look to sort of uncover today. So to that end, I guess the next place I want you to go is, okay, I'm sold. How do you know that this is possible? Right? We consume, you see this inspiration in New York Times, 36 questions to fall in love, and all of a sudden it starts to click and go, oh my gosh, there might be it might not just be luck and error, right? It might just be there might be an actual way, a predictable way to get there. So how did you know? How did you hypothesize and figure out that, this might actually work in the real world?
Yeah, so this is where, typical 10-year overnight success story, right? So rolling back over the last decade, and this is where I think a little bit the dots line up in retrospect. So the inspiration certainly came from that New Yorker, article and the research there. And at the time I was running product teams, and the biggest challenge I had there was aligning marketing and engineering and product teams. Everyone had different directions, everyone had different KPIs, and it was really hard to get everybody to align to the same goal and work in the same direction. And so I started to develop these frameworks and, draw things on the whiteboard at work that, kind of helped the marketing people to understand that the choices we make, on the marketing website affect the product downstream, and the product people to see that actually you can't just build great engineering stuff, you've got to build sales triggers and leverages and so on into the product itself. And for the sales team, part of the framework also helped to align them around the fact that it's not just transactional. Invest in the longer term, because if we can create relationships with customers, good things happen downstream. So it's sort of, the experience of running product teams started the framework happening. And then really the final push as to why not only do I think it's possible, but now it's vetted, tested, and patented, so it is actually possible, and I've got hundreds of success stories. The final trigger was really COVID. We don't often hear good news stories coming out of the world being locked up, but it was the discipline of having to transition from doing in-person workshops where you have the latitude to spend half a day, get to know people, etc., to having to do it online in 2 hours with people you've never met before. Right, so without kind of no choice but to come up with a really tight process to run the workshop, to get the participants aligned and on board, to get them the outcome that they need, which is at the end of the day, what should I do to make the relationships with my site visitors better? Like, it's all fine to say, hey, 97% isn't success, but, ultimately you've got to provide people with a really clear roadmap for what changes to make in their digital space, in their EDM, in their customer service center, so that they can foster the relationship. So, these are the sort of big, I suppose, moments in time that lined up. So it was the New Yorker article, and then it was having to put it into practice with product teams and marketing and sales teams to align them. And then COVID was the big catalyst. It was like, okay, let's get this tight. And then once that happened, it was easy, I say easy, to write the book and write the process down and get it all condensed into a tight format.
So if I'm listening to this and I'm going, hey, I'm sold. And we live in a society where we want the easy button. Like, I don't want to do all the working out. I just want to be fit, right? I'm assuming you've got a magic pill, buy the book, and voila, all of your conversion problems go away. I'm assuming it is that simple.
Well, it's funny that you ask, Amas, and you really are asking me all the pointed and excellent questions. So thank you. But I put out a series of courses at the beginning of last year now, yeah, a year ago, and I found that people didn't actually want to learn very much. So then I wrote a book, and I haven't tested.
You're going the wrong way.
Yeah. And I'm like, people don't want to read a book. And so literally I am delivering a button. I've taken all of this process and I'm delivering a button which is at ramp.com. And you can press the button if you don't want to read the book, if you don't want to do the courses. There it is, your instant pretty much an instant analysis of your baseline stats to tell you what are the highest value things you can do on your website to start to increase your conversion rates. And again, these are things that have worked for people. I can pull out all kinds of success stories, but I'll give you viewers a sense of some of them. I worked with a fintech company, Pocketsmith. They made literally one UX change in their onboarding. We found where people were dropping off. So they were getting lots of people through the front end, and then it was like 97% drop off after sign up. We made one change and their revenue picked up by 138% starting from the next month. So there are absolutely changes which you can make and put into place instantly that will have a market and measured effect on your bottom line.
And if you're just listening, I am having this conversation with Anna. We're talking about human to human relationships in this whole world of customer service, customer experience, sales, and we're talking about how might we change the paradigm from this world, particularly in the digital world, where you just expect, right, 90 something percent of your customers to not buy. You're describing a process that's not brand new to me, which is this whole conversion optimization. But generally, the framing is to go from, we have 1% conversion, so 99% failure rate. And we're trying to tweak that thing so that by tomorrow it's 98.5%. Right? How is what I am used to and our audience is used to different from what you were describing? Talk a little bit about the different sort of approaches that makes the outcomes significantly different.
Yeah. So the fundamental reason why these outcomes are orders of magnitude above what we normally see, and again, I'll draw on some examples in a second, is that the foundation is based on the way that we as humans make decisions and form relationships in natural ways. So to give you an example, if you meet let's say you're in the market to find a new spouse or, boyfriend, girlfriend, situation partner, and you go out on a first date, right? On the first date, if the other person was to start talking about moving in and having 7 kids, you'd be like, red flag, right? And you'd be like, thank you so much. The Starbucks, it's on me. And, no, don't call me, right? That's just a very natural response that as humans we have. And yet we land on a website. We don't know the brand. It's our first time together. And the very first thing we see is book a demo. Now, book a demo is the equivalent of let's get married and have 7 children. I'm not ready for that kind of commitment. And so making small changes to your website, like changing book a demo to view a demo, you can realize increases of about 30% in conversion from the people who come to your website, because book a demo, it's too much too soon. You've got to put that at the right moment in time as the relationship evolves. And this is where it comes back to those 36 questions of love. If you look at the patterns in those questions, the cadence at which you ask the vulnerable and intimate questions increases over time. So you don't lead with marriage and 7 kids. You lead with, let's get to know each other. Hey, what are you all about? What's your value proposition? Do I understand how your product is going to make my life better? Not the hard sell. And the super interesting thing is, without exception, with the brands that I work with, if you look at their sales deck and their sales process that is done by a human salesperson, they nail this. It's 100% smooth. In a natural way, salespeople understand how to take someone on a journey. They preempt the anxiety that's going to come up, and they answer those questions in advance. A good salesperson doesn't start with a close. They take you on a journey of escalating commitment. And then we forget all of that when we build a website. We go book a demo. Welcome, Amas. Book a demo right now.
Yeah, like let's do it. Is that Do you find, is there applicability in what I would call kind of, let's take retail? I might be saying, look, I just want someone to buy a shoe or a $10 course or whatever it is. Are the is the journey significantly different, or it's still a journey, it just happens a lot quicker? Like, what's the applicability? I'm thinking, yes, if you're talking about SaaS and a B2B product, right? I see that. I could see folks sort of going, what if my product is much more, smaller, right? From a price point and from complexity perspective.
Yeah, and this is where, again, when you look at how we form relationships and how we're influenced to make decisions, it's really important, even for things like shoes and paper clips and all the rest of it. According to Google's latest stats, people will Google other people's recommendations and reviews almost 100% of the time when they buy. And it doesn't matter if it's a big engineering solution or a B2B transaction or literally a paperclip. People Google what is the best kind of paperclip out there. And this is where the process really comes into its own. And that is that if you look at how we buy, we go stimulus to, discovery, research, evaluation, decision. If you get a recommendation from a trusted person, so if someone, let's say Amas, you and I are friends, and you tell me to go and buy this kind of paperclip, I'm going to skip discovery, I'm going to skip research, I'm going to skip evaluation, and I'm going to go straight to decision. So you can cut down the entire buying process for shoes, for lipsticks, for handbags by 60%, by ensuring that the people who did buy a lipstick and a shoe from you last time are giving you strong recommendations to their peers. And this is, when you look at things like social selling and social buying and why that is such a powerful, and the whole field of influencers and why that field is so powerful, it's because the recommendations influence us as humans, and we just cut out 60% of the process. So even if you're buying shoes, it still works.
Wow. I want to talk about, I want to leave sales for a second and talk about the applicability on the call it recommendation, service, support, what have you. Specifically, I see that, brands are in the business of trying to get you to become, maybe ambassador is too strong of a word, but give me high marks. Like, and that decision almost always is tied to how good I am, how good the brand is to you after you've made the purchase, right? Meaning I never have to contact you, the thing just works, or I do have an issue. So talk a little bit about this moment of truth again. I am now back on your site, right? This
Yep.
time not to buy, this time for reassurance, this time for this. But the end result is the same, right? In that I either leave with, right, I feel better, I'm great, you're the deal, which is a self-reinforcing thing, or I now dislike you and I never want to see you again. How do
Yeah.
how how might you think we apply this sort of framework into the non-sales parts of the journey?
Yeah, I think what comes to mind straight away is the used car industry, right? So the used car industry, again, not in digital, but in person, nails this. And after you buy a car, they will call you 2 days later. It's in their script. They call you 2 days later and they say, "Are you still happy with that car?" And of course, you are. And the only reason they do it is so that the memory that's left in your mind is one of a positive experience. And if you had any doubt after the purchase at all, it's eliminated because now you've confirmed and you want to be consistent with what you just said to the salesperson. And so your enjoyment of that product is elevated. And this is where, now we jump into digital. Companies like Grammarly do this at scale and absolutely brilliantly. You sign up to Grammarly and every week they send you a little note to say, "Congratulations, you've spell checked 97% of words better than the average person." And I'm like, wow, amazing. I'm a really good spell checker. Good on me, right? But it just reaffirms the value that that product is having in my life. And I think that's a really, really important thing, because especially if we go back to things like, subscription-based SaaS products,
Right.
You can't just reach out to someone the day before the annual renewal is due. You've got to be reminding people of your value along the journey, right? Because ultimately, again, we come back to the humanity of it all. You and I live in a Western industrialized nation and we make 35,000 decisions a day. So you can be sure that the things we're thinking about, which is what are we having for dinner? Have I remembered to pick up my children from school, etc., etc. We're not thinking about Grammarly and the value that they're putting into our lives. Grammarly needs to remind us. And so, the mechanisms that we set up for those reminders of value are really important in nurturing the relationship over a long time. Just like you would in a marriage. You don't just get married and then bang, it's done. You
Right.
got to buy flowers on Valentine's Day. You do.
Exactly. And say I love you every day and reaffirm.
Exactly.
I think
Yeah.
that's so spot on. I'm running out of time, but I want to touch on some of my impressions hearing some of this. It reminds me of I love to cook, right?
Mhm.
And I am the guy who goes to a restaurant, have a nice meal, and embarrass whoever I'm with, my family, and said, "Could you have the chef come out and teach me some things?" And they're like, "Oh my God, we're mortified because I'm trying to perfect my track." So what this conversation reminds me of eggs, right? Scrambled eggs, right? Some of the first things you learn how to make as a before I was tall enough to reach over the stove. So I've been making it for years. And so when I listen to you, whether it's the customer reviews, you have not invented any new wheel here, right?
Uh-huh.
But I got an advice one time from a chef about how to make fluffy scrambled eggs, right?
Mhm.
And it has taken my scrambled egg game to mediocre to I kid you not. People I make scrambled egg for people and they go, oh my gosh, right? And I feel like it's a similar thing you're saying, right? In that all of these elements, their brands are listening, who are people are listening are going, well, Anna, I follow up with clients. We do reviews, we do blah blah blah. Kind of like me, I'm like, I've got the eggs, I break the eggs, I have salt and pepper, and do all of this, but I'm not making fluffy, delicious eggs until I got that. Is it fair to say that it's like it's there, but you like me are not thinking about the sequence, how much heat, like how it's the putting it all together. It's such a subtle difference, but it's night and day. It's a difference between your 3% conversion and like a magnitude above that. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think the scrambled egg analogy is an excellent one, right? So if you're a Michelin star chef, you're going to nail scrambled eggs every single time. If you're Anna Harrison, 1 out of 10 times you may get away a really good scrambled egg, but you're relying on luck. And I think a lot of this process, as evidenced by the fact that our conversion rates are 2 and 3%, we're relying on luck. So we're putting the future of our profitability as a business and the sustainability of the business in the long run largely relying on luck. Whereas here, once you have a script and you have a formula and you can consistently make really good scrambled eggs, you're always going to nail it. And so, sure, maybe you're not the first guy to make scrambled eggs, but to do that consistently puts you way above, ahead of the other people making scrambled eggs in life.
And let me kind of put together the implications of what you're sharing, right? So if I put you in front of my students, right, and some of them are thinking about creating new businesses, and they're all following into the same deal, right? They know about lads and this, and they get the racket. Like the numbers game, you have to pay Google more money. I'll take a quick detour. Many years ago, in the mid 2000s, early to mid 2000s, I was. It's actually how I ended up visiting Australia for the first time. I was in the company I worked for. One of the things we did was flower. We sold flowers, right? And so getting flowers digital was somewhat new and nascent at the time. And so we put the thing on the website. We were, we were delivering flowers all around the world, and we used to sit around and go like, the only person getting rich was Google. All of us in our competitions were all just like the margins were just being thin. And by far the biggest number on the line was that we were all had, again, not that we weren't trying other things, right? I was VP over customer experience or what have you, right? So like, of course we were doing all this loyalty and all this sort of deal. But at the end of the day, when Valentine's Day came, we took all of our money, all of us, and we all gave it. There were big four at the time, and we all handed the money over to Google. And I used to get on stages then, if you heard me speak, and talk about the promiscuity of the flower buyer, right? Like I would say they have no loyalty. They sort of come on every time and they do all of this. And so if you were given someone advice today and said you wanted to start a flower business for intents and purposes, it seems to me as though like if they wanted to buy into this model, they'll be thinking about it completely different. They wouldn't be thinking about, I'm going to go broke, handing money to Google, and eventually maybe my email campaign will start to work better and I'll give Google less and less. And maybe one day I get to like 4% conversion rate and I am a hero. What would you be saying to young entrepreneurs or of any age who are looking to get in now and not get into the rat race that we are all in today?
Yeah, I'd say back yourself and stake your business on formulating great relationships with your target audience and with your buyers, because that's going to pay dividends for you. There is a cadence to how we form relationships, and you can leverage that. You can change the way that people behave and interact with your brand and turn the statistics in your favor by doing things which are understood and documented, and you can help digital to help you to create great relationships. Today we still have Google and we still have Facebook, and they have their hockey stick ad revenue growth, and it's a very well and intelligent machine. But we look forward, you can see the little ripples kind of. I'm going to finish with a bit of a teaser for your audience here. You
Sure.
can see the ripples coming. There's talk of Web3, there's talk of decentralized ownership of DAOs, and us as humans owning our own personal information. And then there's the regulatory realities that at some point all giants fall. So if Google is dissected, if Facebook is crumbled into individual pieces, and advertising as we know it will need to change, and the model for advertising will need to change. And so staking your future as an entrepreneur on creating great relationships with your target audience future proofs your business. And this isn't me saying so. Harvard research shows that loyalty creates 2.5 times more revenue. Loyalty future-proofs your business. It makes it more sustainable. It makes it less prone to dips during recessionary conditions. So, the science is out there. It's just the discipline of creating the hooks that you need in your digital presence to nurture those relationships, just like you would in real life.
Wow. Wow. This has been really enlightening. So where do you hang out? How can folks interact with you? What social platforms? And obviously we will put this in the show notes. But if I'm listening to this and I go, I want to learn more. Where do I start? How can folks interact with you?
LinkedIn is a good place to find me. But if you want the magic button or read the book or do the courses, any of that, just go to ramp.com. That's RAMMP.com and find it all there.
Perfect. Well, this has been really, really enlightening. I hope you will come back again. And to everyone listening, we will chat with you guys again next time. Thanks for listening.
Thanks so much, Amas, and thanks for joining in on the conversation. And if you have any questions, shoot them through. We'll follow them up.
It's good.
Excellent.
Thank you for listening. Please subscribe and follow me online at Amas Tanuma. Look forward to chatting with you next time.